Now, if you were to ask me to name my favorite driver on the current grid, I'd have about 6 different answers for you. There are 3 drivers that I want to see do good. Like, I'm not really a fan of theirs, but I have a soft spot for them, and those drivers are Carlos Sainz, George Russell, and Charles Leclerc. Then there's the drivers that I genuinely support. And number 3, I've got Alex Albon because, Southeast Asia represent. Number 2, I've got Gabriel Bortoleto. I know that sounds super random. I didn't even think I'll be a big fan of him going into this year, but as the season progressed, I grew a very big liking for him. So yeah, Bortoleto's at 2. And at number 1, I've got Lewis Hamilton. But if you can tell from the title, that hasn't always been the case. Because the thing is, I'm also a Ferrari fan, and I absolutely hated that man back in the day when he was constantly kicking our ass. But here's why I became a really big Lewis Hamilton fan, and he's one of my favorite drivers of all time, and I've started to appreciate him over time, and here's why I think you should too. And I guess, let's continue the trend of making a video of a driver I like once a month. In August was Bortoleto, last month was Alex Albon, and earlier this week was Leah Block. Although I don't know if we're counting the lower formulas. But anyways, before we begin, be sure to subscribe and also follow me on socials, Twitter and Instagram. Now, growing up, I was a big Ferrari fan that was mostly down to Fernando Alonso because I was named after Fernando Alonso, but just replaced the Z with an S, like Alonso Morning. So that's my name, which explains my channel name. Now, why was I named after Fernando? Well, he was the reigning world champion the year I was born, so yeah. So I guess if I was born in 2009, my name would be Hamilton, and if I was born in 2008, my name would be Raikkonen, which only was born a year later. So yeah, growing up, my allegiance was always with Ferrari. Even when Fernando Alonso jumped ship to McLaren in 2015, I still remained a Ferrari fan because I'm more team than driver. And Ferrari had Seb and Kimi anyways. I really like those guys. In fact, Kimi's my favorite driver of all time now. Don't ask why I'm so inconsistent with my favorite driver. Just watch the entire video. So the same year Fernando Alonso left for McLaren is the same year I became a certified Lewis Hamilton hater. Now, I didn't really hate anyone before this because if you're a baby, you don't really hate anyone. You just watch the sport. I mean, you're sad when your team loses, but other than that, you don't really hate anyone within the sport. But I feel like once you turn 7 or 8, that's when it begins. And 2015 is when I started hating Lewis Hamilton, especially after the US Grand Prix, after he threw the cap at Nico. And fair enough to Nico for throwing it back at Lewis. I would have done the same thing. That's what absolutely put me over the edge because I like Nico more than Lewis to begin with. I have a strong allegiance for the German drivers. In fact, my favorite national football team is Germany as well. So yeah, from 2015 onwards, I was on the Lewis Hamilton hate watch. Like the strongest hate watch you can possibly imagine. And I was a Cavs fan at this time. I absolutely hate the Boston Celtics, especially Kelly Olynyk for tearing off Kevin Love's arm and the entire Golden State Warriors organization. I still hate them now, by the way. And the only times I was able to enjoy the Lewis Hamilton hate watch was 2016 when Rosberg won the championship. But 2017 and 2018 was an absolute living hell, and I think a lot of you Ferrari fans can agree with this, especially Singapore 2017, because that would have been such a huge points gain, and then Seb had that crash on lap 1, and then the rest of the Asian Tour was just a living nightmare. And we all know 2018 at the German Grand Prix, I still think Lewis would have won that race without Vettel crashing, but the fact that Vettel crashed makes it a lot more embarrassing. He had zero pressure from behind. 2019 was just pure Lewis Hamilton domination, no championship fight throughout the entire season, and our only hope was Bottas. Look how well that went. Then 2020 rolls around. Again, zero hope at all, especially being a Ferrari fan at the time. Don't remind me of that season. So again, my only hope was Bottas again. I thought it was coming after the first race and Lewis Hamilton had a really bad weekend, and then he continues to dominate the rest of the season and ties with Michael Schumacher. But this is when I start to soften up with Lewis Hamilton, and I didn't really hate him anymore after this because we witnessed history happen in front of us. 7 world championships is something that not a lot of people in sports can say. I mean, you have Tom Brady, Dale Earnhardt, Schumacher, Hamilton. That's about it. Robert Horry, Bill Russell. There's not a lot of athletes that come to mind that have this many world championships, and you have to appreciate it in the moment. I thought I would hate him a lot more after this, especially considering the fact that he tied up with a Ferrari legend. But no, quite the opposite, and I think a lot of the F1 community at the time really appreciated his 7th world championship, and the race that he got his 7th world championship in proves that he is a deserving 7-time world champion. And now 2021 rolls around. I've mentioned that I'm a Ferrari fan, so you would expect me to be gunning for Max Verstappen to win the championship after Lewis Hamilton caused us so much heartache and pain in the late 2010s. But no, I wanted the next non-Mercedes champion to be a Ferrari driver. So I did not want Max Verstappen to win 2021. And look what happened in the end. But I thought me supporting Lewis Hamilton would just be a one-time thing for the 2021 season. But no. At the time, my favorite driver was Sebastian Vettel. Obviously, he was a leading driver at Ferrari for the past few years. But when 2021 ended, Lewis Hamilton became my favorite driver. I don't know if you can count this as bandwagoning, but I was still true to being a Ferrari fan because, team over driver. But the more I learned about Lewis Hamilton and his upbringing into the sport made me appreciate him a lot more. The young boy from Stevenage got into racing at a very young age, and his dad had to work 2 jobs for him, and he paved his way through the junior categories and had one of the greatest junior careers of all time, then went on to match the reigning world champion Fernando Alonso in 2007. And also, I really like his initiatives off track. Speaking on climate change, say what you want about how F1 is probably the most unenvironmentally friendly sport of all time. As long as he gets his message across and uses his platform to combat against the problem that he wants to solve, then he's used his platform correctly, because even if he inspires just one fan to make a difference, then he's done his job already. Him and Sebastian Vettel, one of the few drivers who actively support the LGBTQ community, using LGBTQ helmets in countries that are actively against homosexuals. Speaking about Sebastian Vettel, I feel like now Lewis is in the sebification of his career where he's not the driver he once was, and there's a clear decline from his form back in 2021, and that's something similar we saw with Sebastian Vettel from 2019 to 2022. Oh, but don't get things twisted, Seb was completely washed by that era, but I think Lewis now, if you give him the correct machinery, he can still challenge for wins and podiums, just not so sure about a championship. And that was also the same era that people started to grow a liking for Seb, but people still hate Lewis Hamilton. Like, a lot of people still hate Lewis Hamilton. And I find it funny that when Sebastian Vettel would do some form of activism, people praised him for that because, he's thinking about bigger worldly problems. He's not just thinking about himself like the other drivers on the grid. But when Lewis Hamilton does that, he gets bombarded with a lot of hate. Now, why is that the case? Is it because of...
Maybe it's because I'm black.
We all know the stories of when Lewis first came into the sport. A lot of the fans did not appreciate him at the time because of his skin tone. He was black. To put it simply, he was not of the main demographic of F1, which is predominantly white European males. And you can still see a lot of that hate today. Just go on F1 Twitter after a race weekend. And it doesn't help that an F1 legend himself, Nelson Piquet Sr., called Lewis Hamilton the N-word. But I'm not saying that all the hate towards Lewis Hamilton is racially motivated. I mean, I literally hate Lewis Hamilton back in the day for throwing the hat at Rosberg. Because, as I said, I wanted Rosberg to win the championship. But it is the biggest reason why so many people hate Lewis Hamilton. Another thing I noticed about Lewis is that people say that him being black shouldn't be an important talking point about him. But it really should be. He's proving to kids that you do not have to be part of the main demographic to make it big time in the sport. Apart from me, I'm 18, that ship has sailed a long time ago, and I'm extremely fat. So yeah, yay. And which is why I'm a really big fan of the Mission 44 initiative. And also why I believe Lewis Hamilton is a big supporter of the F1 Academy series. Because, Both of these are pretty similar in showing that you do not have to be part of the main demographic to make it big. Say all you want about Lewis Hamilton being a hypocrite. I especially remember this video from a few years ago, but you have to respect the fact that he's pushing for bigger things to happen, not just in F1. In society, in general, I think he's one of the best public figures to come out of the sport in a long time. Now, I've had the pleasure to be up close and meet a lot of F1 drivers over the past 3 years. And don't get me wrong, the first time I ever met a driver was Pierre Gasly back in 2022. And you can just look at my face. Yeah, I'm still wearing a face mask during the COVID time, but you can just look at my face. I was scared inside. But now it's kind of like, oh, cool. It's Lance Stroll. 3 inches away from me. Oh, it's Kimi Antonelli. And I've never formally met Lewis Hamilton. I've been super close to him on 4 different occasions. Never got an autograph, never a selfie, and all 4 of those times was the most excited I've been to see a driver. And I've been near Max Verstappen. I've met my celebrity crush in Leah Block. Is she really a celebrity? Although I could have got Lewis's autograph, I just lost the thing I wanted him to sign. Lewis is bigger than F1. I know that might be a controversial statement, but this wouldn't be incorrect if we were talking about the mid to late 2010s. And it's not the first time we've seen this with athletes. For crying out loud, mate, Ayrton Senna was bigger than F1 back in the day. Tom Brady is bigger than American football. LeBron, okay, not sure about LeBron, but Michael Jordan is definitely bigger than basketball. Tiger Woods is the prime example of an athlete being bigger than the sport. Obviously, I'm not implying that Lewis Hamilton's more popular than F1. I mean, F1 has been a sport for 75 years, but in terms of his influence, he definitely is. And those are the reasons why I went from a Lewis Hamilton hater to a Lewis Hamilton fan. There's one more driver I'd like to talk about who gets unnecessary hate, and the next video will be about him. And that's Lando Norris.